leaving in droves. And as they were leaving, they were threatened with lawsuits. If you ever spoke to anyone about Theranos, you would get sued. And they monitored people after they left. I mean, it was crazy. And Tyler had finally had enough. And he tried reasoning with his grandfather and said, look, dude, I'm there. I know what's going on there. This is not good. You need to get out of it. And his grandfather didn't believe him. So Tyler, I'll say this, he's a very brave kid because not a lot of people have the guts to do this, but he buys a burner phone and he contacts John Carreyrou at the Wall Street Journal. And Elizabeth and Sunny immediately suspect him.
It's so crazy he had to buy like a burner phone, like he's like from season 1 of The Wire. To do this.
So Sunny and Elizabeth were so obsessed with how like people coming and going. They were constantly reading people's emails. You would send an email and not CC them, and then one of them would write you back. Like they looked over everything that everybody did. And like I said, Sunny, what is Sunny really doing all day? He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have any background in medicine or technology like this.
They definitely weren't fixing their machines. So I guess they had nothing but time to micromanage and read people's emails like a bunch of fucking creeps.
They're fucking maniacs. So Tyler, one day he gets a call from his grandfather and he says, I want you to come over. Tyler comes over and his grandfather says, look, they want to convince me. They know that you're talking to the Wall Street Journal. Tyler's trying to deny this. He says, they're telling me that you're stupid. They can't convince me of that, but you can't convince me that these machines don't work. And he says, I've got some lawyers here. They want you to sign something. I want you to sign it. And think about that. Your grandfather telling you, I don't believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Even right. And Tyler just says no, and he won't sign it. And he goes back to his parents, and his parents are furious because now they realize they're going to have to hire lawyers. Tyler comes from a very rich family, but his parents eventually had to spend $500,000 to defend him. They had so many lawsuits, and they were dragging him into court so often. I mean, this is why people wouldn't say anything, because who has that kind of money?
Exactly.
Right.
Unless you're Tyler.
Unless you're
Tyler's parents.
At one time, I grew up around a lot of rich kids, and they don't often come through for you, especially rich white boys. I give them credit for that. Maybe I shouldn't, because it's the decent thing to do. But good on you, Tyler, if you're listening. I congratulate you. There's another employee who spoke out as well, and she was a good friend of Tyler's. Her name was Erica Chang, and she was a 22-year-old Berkeley grad, worked there for 7 months at Theranos before she quit. And she turned evidence over at the Whistleblower Act in San Francisco. And she told them the labs were so bad that they threatened people's lives, and that both Sunny and Elizabeth knew this and that they didn't care. And so she leaves the company, and she realized she was being followed. She gets another job and thinks she's being followed. And then one day he comes up to her at her office and hands her a note, and it's directly from David Boies, and they're trying to sue her. And it includes her new address on the letter. And she told no one about this new address.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it's some sneaky shit. So she's so scared. She's like, well, fuck it. If there's something's going to happen to me, I'm going to leave a trail. So she emails the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, and tells them, you need to look at these labs because they're not working. All right, let's fast forward to October 2015, and reporter John Carreyrou of the Wall Street Journal wrote a bombshell article about her equipment not working, giving inaccurate results, and that they bought outside equipment into their labs because their own machines were failing. And David Boies and their lawyers on the board tried everything to stop this article from coming out. And the Wall Street Journal gave them all the information before they put everything to press. They wanted to make sure that they had all their ducks in a row. They gave them every opportunity to contradict anything that they put in this article. And they tried to threaten the Wall Street Journal. They were going to sue them if they ran this article, all this crap. And that night, Elizabeth, she's, by the way, in Harvard giving a speech, and she goes on Jim Cramer's Mad Money. And he's such a fucking asshole.
Seriously, put that dude on the list.
Fuck. So she's defiant. She says, you know what? First they say you're crazy, then they fight you, and then you change the world. And she calls the Wall Street Journal a tabloid. and it's irresponsible, and she's fighting, fighting, fighting. And she still goes on her speaking tour. She makes speeches for the Wall Street Journal 2 weeks later at their conference. And she meets with Forbes at a conference. She is defiant. Also, what happens around this time in November is she is honored by Glamour magazine as one of their Women of the Year. And I give Glamour this. I know they pick these things like several months in advance.
Right.
Because it's in their print issue. So they didn't know. But still, really. And my favorite part of this.
Because she's so glamorous, by the way. She's so
She
glamorous.
looks great here. I have to say that look at the Glamour, one time I thought she really, because normally that hair definitely needs some conditioner.
Right.
But Jared Leto introduced her, and he introduced her by saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, the only person in the world who makes me feel like a lazy bastard, Elizabeth Holmes." I'm like, is Jared Leto really hardworking and I just don't know this about him?
I don't know. I'm like, that's just something he thinks about himself. Everyone in the room's like, I've never heard that about you, but okay.
I'm an actor and I'm in a band. Like, really, I'm busy. Like,
So
okay.
busy.
Anyway, the end is coming soon for Elizabeth. In January of 2016, the CMS saw deficiencies in staff, proficiencies, procedures, and equipment. They treat their employees so badly that the only ones they can keep are not qualified to run blood tests. They had a person that was in charge of the laboratory that was a dermatologist. I mean, they had people that were not qualified to do what they were doing. Elizabeth Holmes is banned from owning or operating a lab or any blood testing service for 2 years after failing at their Newark, California laboratory. She goes on the Today Show and she looks really run down. And she says to Maria Shriver, like, yeah, we were so surprised that all this happened, but we're going to work really hard. And I'm going to form a medical and scientific advisory board to work on this. Like, after 10 years. Right.
Yeah. I think the answer is more meetings. That'll fix it.
That'll learn them. And the FDA orders them to stop using their nanotainers, and Walgreens ends their deal finally. And Sunny leaves the company or is fired, however you want to look at it. So the state of Arizona sues for selling 1.5 million blood tests to Arizonans while concealing or misrepresenting important facts. And they paid millions in fines over this. And by 2018, it's all over. Theranos is closed down, and Elizabeth and Sunny are charged by the U.S. Attorney's Office for several counts of wire fraud. Both Elizabeth and Sunny have been deposed by the SEC already. And during her deposition, she said, "I don't know," or a variation of that, over 600 times.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. She loses voting control of her company and is banned from holding an officer's position in a public company for 10 years, plus a $500,000 fine. Turns out in 2014, when they claimed to make $100 million in revenue, they only made $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, in her defense, math is hard.
Girls aren't good at it.
Girls aren't good at math. It's hard.
So both deny they knowingly defrauded people. They each face up to 20 years in prison. And Sunny cleaned the internet of his presence. You cannot find a lot of information about Sunny. You certainly don't know what he's up to now. I think he's still in the States. But Elizabeth, on the other hand, is living in San Francisco with a much younger man. He's a hotel heir. And they went to Burning Man. And they hang out with her dog and they go for walks in the park. And his name is William Billy Evans. And they just sent out their engagement cards or notices. So we don't know what's going to ultimately happen. But that's our asshole for this episode, Elizabeth Holmes.
She is a serious asshole. Good job, Margo.
Thank you. It's just the level of deception and just not care. I mean, it's one thing, like I was thinking about this today, like I have there's an app called Glam Squad, and I ordered a pedicure and the person went to the wrong building. And that's a foul up that's like annoying, but my life isn't being threatened. It's
Right.
like she you know what I mean? It's not going to hurt my life. And this is something like she put people's lives in her hands and she didn't care. She just kept making more and more, drilling in more and more money, more and more investors, and that's all they cared about.
It's just gross. It's
Ugh.
gross. I would love to go to her wedding, though. I bet it's a shit show. She can't even. I bet she didn't plan it very well.
I wonder
Well,
if her
I
voice was
set up a
higher.
board to manage the wedding, and I don't know why it didn't go well. She's an asshole. Fuck her.
Yeah, fuck her.
I hope she's living in the building that's actually sinking. Is she living in the There's a building here in San Francisco with all these really rich, fancy apartments, and the building's actually sinking.
No, she just left an apartment and it was on Lombard Street or right next to Lombard Street.
Okay.
And it was like 5K a month. But they just left that because they were tracked down by Inside Edition that
Mm.
followed them out of their house. And so they had to get a new place. But she's still like she's trying to meet with investors and she thinks like she's got another idea in her and she's like learned all of her lessons and she's just going to try someplace else.
You
And it's
guys,
just,
check out my time machine that I drew.
wouldn't it be funny if that was actually a thing she could build? Like the most important invention ever could be that.
Maybe. Then this show will never exist. She'll go back in time. She'll fix it.
It's such a trigger shitty bosses and just shitty boss behavior.
It
Just
is.
like just treating everybody so terribly.
I fucking hate that. And she's an asshole and a creep. Do you want to hear about someone who's not a creep?
I certainly do.
Okay. So, in the spirit of inventors, I discovered Patricia Bath. Do you know who this is?
No, I don't.
Okay. She is the first Black person to serve as an ophthalmology resident at New York University and the first woman on staff at the Jules Stein Eye Institute. She's the first African-American female doctor to receive a patent for medical purposes. She owns 5 patents. She's the holder of 5 patents. She founded the nonprofit American Institute for the Prevention of Blindness that's in Washington, D.C. And she invented laser eye surgery to remove cataracts.
Wow.
So, born in November 4th, 1942 in Harlem, New York, Patricia Bath is the daughter of Rupert and Gladys Bath. Her father was an immigrant from Trinidad. He was a newspaper columnist, a merchant seaman, and the first Black man to work for the New York City subway as a motorman.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
At a very young age, Patricia excelled in science and math and was inspired by her teachers to pursue research. And while in high school, this woman's a legit genius, by the way, not a fake Elizabeth Holmes genius. While in high school, Bath applied for and won a National Science Foundation scholarship, which led her to a research project at, I think it's pronounced Yeshiva University. And
Yeshiva.
and Harlem Hospital Center, studying connections between cancer, nutrition, and stress. And the head of the research program realized the significance of her findings and published them in a scientific paper.
Oh, wow.
So, teenager. So, in 1960, Bath won the Merit Award from Mademoiselle magazine for her contribution to the project. She was still a teenager, you guys. In 1968, there was the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and she wanted to dedicate herself to achieving one of his dreams, which was something called the Poor People's Campaign. So she organized and led Howard University medical students in providing volunteer healthcare services to the Poor People's Campaign in Resurrection City.
Wow.
Yeah, she did a lot of awesome shit. So in 1986, Bath was conducting research at the Rothschild Eye Institute of Paris and doing some work at the Laser Medical Center in Berlin. And that's when she started doing her like early studies in laser cataract surgery. And then she patented it in 1988. And some of her other patents, they're all related to like the laser cataract surgery. Like she's just perfected it. And in 2000, she was granted a patent for a method of using pulsed ultrasound to remove cataracts. And in 2003, she got a patent for combining the laser and the ultrasound